conditions applicable to specific land uses.
Questions? Anybody from the audience? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think Garrett's going to be here again.
That's the zoning code that we're
Yeah,
reviewing.
I was going to say we're going to get paid double time.
But he's supposed to be.
Oh, well, I'm thinking about it. Rhonda wants these back.
Yeah.
And then he'll complain.
Otherwise, you guys started to, or I forgot.
All right, so there's the minutes from November 16th, I believe.
I'll move those minutes.
All right, second. All in favor?
Picture.
It's really starting to develop now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I'm good with
We spent the night, and I woke up, and she was already up, and that's how she greeted me. It's like,
It is. Well, it was a big pack out.
What are we supposed to
Hey,
do?
what are you doing?
Who do you want to cut?
that's in there that's,
What do you want
you
to
know,
cut?
Yeah, exactly. But she
She's,
says, always
8 months old.
You know, he's always adding
No,
that
not
extra
yet.
stuff. Thanks.
Yep, this is cool, too. Wait. Whoops.
Well, guess it's going down.
All right, he's on the move now.
Cancer.
There's a lot
My
of
mom
people.
died in 1971.
It also made him dizzy. And
She had liver problems.
My dad died in the 80s.
We have to do business.
Sure.
Yeah, that's all we need.
Yeah.
6, right?
He found
There's
out
7.
that
Oh, there's 7.
Well, he
resting was
was
very
Garrett will come in in about 2
It
minutes.
only took him so far.
Yeah, we're good.
Consumption.
Then he had to
Oh,
go
consumption,
fight
yeah.
it.
Here he comes.
Difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, he doesn't look.
And build it was tolerant.
I feel, I got to start the meeting. Here we go.
So, yeah.
Call to order the council committee meetings. The first item on our agenda, under the Committee of the Whole, City Flag Committee Update.
Looks like you said.
Yeah, I don't know, do one of you have a person you want to, I know John,
Yeah.
or I know the other committee members here, and they've got props, I think, too. I thought I saw props, didn't I? Or just a PowerPoint?
That's a problem.
So you'll have to spin around here to see these screens here, but I'm John Reidinger. I am 837 Harold Avenue. I am serving as the chairman of the Flag Committee. We have been meeting since, I believe, July, basically going through all the different factors that go into choosing a flag for the city of Kent. And so what we're going to do tonight is give you an idea of the process that we have gone through, and then give you the 3 final designs that we are presenting that will move the process forward from here. So let's go ahead and get started with the process first. And then I'm going to speak about the process, and then Zach here is going to speak about the 3 designs, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit about what the next steps are and what we need from council to do those next steps so that we can finalize this before the city hall is done. Specifications. The first thing that we looked at, of course, way back when in June, was we looked at some of the basics of basic good flag design. Good flags are not designed with lots of intricate pictures and words and things like seals. And so when you see a lot of the states that have seals on their flags, those are not good examples of flag design. The United States flag, the Ohio flag, are actually examples of very good flag design because they are very simple but very distinct, easily recognizable, but also easily reproducible. So that's the other thing. And we wanted limited colors and be distinctive and things like that. No lettering, limited color, meaningful, simple, all those good things. And it came from this basic thing, how to design a good flag. It's called Good Flag, Bad Flag from the North American Vexillological Society, or Association, excuse me. So let's move to the next slide, please. And so what we did at Kent Heritage Festival, we began the process of asking the city, or anyone really, for submissions. We really didn't limit who could send them to us. I mean, it was basically anyone who had any connection with Kent could send them. And what we ended up doing, we did this flyer at Heritage Festival. We also did a number of online campaigns, just reminders for people, and word of mouth to get it out. We also had things on the Facebook page, the marquee sign at Haymaker and Water, which, by the way, please tell me that there's plans to fix it, because it's missing a lot of panels right now. It's really hard to read stuff on there. Just FYI, I just saw it on the way over here. And of course on the city's website. We actually ended up receiving 68 designs by August 31st, and in true fashion, for me as a teacher, almost over half of them came in on the last day that we were open. Over half of them. They were from about 33 different people. We saw different things. So what did we do? We looked at the things, we looked at what was being submitted. That was the point of the submission. It wasn't, a lot of people interpreted it as a contest. It wasn't a contest. We weren't looking for a winning entry that we were going to pick, which is what happened in the 1970s. They just picked a winning entry. The J.C. Janes picked out a winning entry of all that Kent Elementary kids. It was a cute little contest. Really didn't result in a great flag design. It just resulted in a winning entry. And so what we noticed were repeated things. And so what I did was I kept it was a spreadsheet of every flag that we got. And I divided it up into what colors were on it, what symbols, how many symbols, all that stuff. And so we could kind of sort through all that data. And so what we did, we got lots of things. Trees, acorns, leaves, squirrels, all the things that make Kent, Kent, right? We gravitated towards the simpler flag designs. When we also looked at what was the most prevalent symbols, and those were the Cuyahoga River, which came up on almost every flag design we got, some reference to the Cuyahoga River. We also saw the Tree City was probably the second number one, the second most popular thing, and other items that came up were the railroad, the Underground Railroad, Kent history, the university education, those type of things. And so that was then we went from that point on, and okay, we looked at some of these symbols and some of the designs that showed us that. So the colors. We opted out of explicit color references to Kent State and Roosevelt High School. Why? Because there's a lot more to Kent than just Kent State or Roosevelt High School. I am an alumnus of both of those schools, but I realized that we have a lot of people in Kent that did not go to Roosevelt. And in turn, we do have a lot of people in Kent that have nothing to do with Kent State. I mean, it is a huge part of our community, but if we did not want a flag that was central, that Kent State was very obvious on. Why? They have their own branding department. They have their own way of doing things. If they would like to make a flag, they are more than welcome to do so. We are not defined specifically by Kent State University. And so that's why we were very careful that this is a flag for the city of Kent, of which KSU and Roosevelt are part of. And so based on the most common colors included in the submissions, we ended up using green, blue, white, and sometimes it kind of went between black and red. Those came up kind of kind of back and forth, but green, blue, white came up a lot. A lot. Blue and green were probably the number one, as you may, I'm sure you're shocked from Kent, Ohio, that blue and green were the number one colors. So we also started soliciting some community opinion. We had an article in the Portager on October 5th that showed all the submissions that had been received up to that point. It really didn't receive a lot of, I mean, when you think about how many people live in Kent and how many people have lived in Kent or worked at Kent State, we got 68 submissions. It's really not a huge amount of numbers here. We got 3 comments from community members, and there's no guarantee that any of the people who commented actually live here. But we did find them useful. We took them into consideration. We discussed them. And another important thing that I want everyone to know, whether council or community members, as we talk about this, all of our meetings were open to the public. At no point did we have any guests show up or ask about them other than the people that submitted them. And so there was a whole process going on that the public was more than welcome to come to and participate in, but obviously no one else chose to do that besides us. And so I want people to remember that as they have opinions about some of the flags, that there was many opportunities to guide that before right now. So, but yeah, we never had that. And then the last part that we had was revisions. After consideration, we narrowed down the submissions to the 3 strongest concepts. It wasn't necessarily choosing 3 designs. It was more or less concepts of those designs. And then we would discuss it, we'd vote on it, we'd repeat it, and we also collaborated on design variations for each of them. We looked at other ways they could be presented that fit what we were looking for. And that was like doing color changes or flipping colors around or putting this symbol here, putting that symbol there. And we also looked at the shape. There are many flag shapes that we could have used, but the 3 most common are obviously the rectangle. The guidon was one that we actually discussed quite a bit. It's kind of an in-between of the burgee, which is what the Ohio flag is shaped like, and the rectangle. And it was kind of seen as kind of an in-between, and not the Ohio flag, but not the U.S. flag. It was discussed. And then, of course, the burgee is the shape of the Ohio flag, or the double swallowtail. There's many versions of that name. And what we ended up finding was additions often complicated, or they took away. Additions often do that. Additions subtract. And they did sometimes result in design we liked even better. Sometimes they didn't. And so, with that, Zach's going to take over this, and I'm going to take over that, and we're going to look at flag option A.
Okay, my name is Zach Garster. I served as the secretary on the City Flag Committee. I'm from 551 Fairchild Avenue. Option A is, again, in the burgee shape that we just discussed a second ago, or John just discussed. Because it references the flag of Ohio and the former flag of the City of Kent, we kind of went in that direction, as you'll see, on all 3 of the options we narrowed down to. A, because we like the way that it looks, and B, we like that tie to the roots of the City of Kent flag and the Ohio State flag. The flag itself, the design is clean and it's minimal and kind of a little bit modernist, I think you'll find, to suggest Kent's forward-looking spirit and goal of civic progress in all things. The 4 converging lines, which meet in the middle to form a star, symbolize the railroads, the canal, and the Cuyahoga River that all come together in the City of Kent. It represents, the 4 lines represent 4 segments of Kent's history, which is another theme that came up a lot in the discussion of the flags. Those are the pre-settlement period, all the way back to even prehistoric time, settlement and canal era, the railroad era, and the university founding, all of which are major turning points in the history of the city. And they symbolize Kent as an intersection of cultures forming one cohesive yet diverse community. And in some portions of those intersections, you'll see the letter K and arrows that point forward toward progress. And like I said, they do converge to form the shape of an 8-pointed star. Why an 8-pointed star? Well, in Underground Railroad, I guess folklore, I don't know if it's always necessarily history, It symbolizes the drinking gourd, the quilt star that it is said guided runaway slaves toward the north on the Underground Railroad, and also as the North Star in Kent being a model of progress, inclusion, diversity, and forward thinking for other communities to follow. The colors are blue for the Cuyahoga River, determination, liberation, alertness, and good fortune. Green to symbolize the Tree City, agricultural influence, prosperity, fertility, youthfulness, and hope. And white for peace and harmony. Oh, we went one too far there. Okay, option B, again in the shape of the Ohio and former Kent flag, is again a clean and modernist design that symbolizes Kent's forward-looking spirit and goal of civic progress. And the black triangle points forward as well toward progress and hope. The black triangle can also represent the chimney swift, the black squirrel, and the railroad. The two bars and the triangle together unite to form the letter K. And the colors, again, are blue for the Cuyahoga River, determination, liberation, alertness, and good fortune. Green for the Tree City, agricultural influence, prosperity, fertility, youthfulness, and hope. And white for peace and harmony. Option C, again in the shape of the former flag of Kent and the state of Ohio, includes a blue chevron and two green chevrons, but we'll talk about those in a second. The blue chevron represents the Crooked River, the Cuyahoga River. The two green represent separately the settlements of Carthage and Franklin Mills united to form the city of Kent. And they are bisected by the blue chevron, symbolizing the way in which the Cuyahoga River runs through the city. The shape also references the shape of a mound if you look at it in a different way for the prehistoric mound builders who inhabited the nearby area in the prehistoric age. And the chevrons and the space to their left, the negative white space to their left, form the shape of a K. Seems to be a running theme as well. The four red stars that are present on the flag are oriented to echo those on the state of Ohio flag. You'll notice to the right of the kind of O shape on the Ohio flag, there is that kind of diamond shape orientation of stars. They also represent, again, the four segments of Kent history: pre-settlement, settlement, canal era, pre-settlement, settlement and canal era, railroad era, and university founding. If I could speak like a good talker. Colors are, again, blue for the Cuyahoga River, determination, liberation, alertness, and good fortune. Green for the Tree City, agricultural influence, prosperity, fertility, youthfulness, and hope. White for peace and harmony. And red, this was where the red got introduced, to represent the state bird and flower of Ohio, the carnation and the cardinal. And that's it. Those were our three options that we narrowed down to, and those are the symbolisms that we found important and the colors that we felt showed the things that we wanted to show in the flag.
Right. And the last part of this, really quick, the next steps. What do we have to do now? Obviously, we're not here to vote on a flag design or approve a flag design. What we want to do is solidify a rollout plan at our upcoming meeting in January 11th. And what we need, the reason we've come to council, in addition to updating you on what's going on here, is also a little bit, we need to request a budget. What is a budget for? Well, when you make a flag, one of the things you need to do is you need to be able to see it. A lot of people, as you've seen them on the paper, flags on paper look great. Flags in person look even better. And so what we really want to do is we want to be able to create 3 actual flags that people can look at, they can touch, the community can see. And we also would need signage. Our plan is to have a display in the Kent Free Library. They have already preliminary approved this as a suggestion. We just kind of casually ran it by them to see what the reception would be. So it would be the 3 flags, the pole, the base, and then the signage for them, which would include QR codes that would have a place that people can offer input. Again, we're not putting public input simply as a vote. It's not like a popularity contest. It's more like to get feedback. Because My personal experience has been that when you, especially with three choices like this, what you'll end up getting is probably like 30 or 40% for about each one, roughly. Unless there's one that the community clearly, overwhelmingly likes, that's mostly just going to be a good reference of what people are thinking right now. Never mind that we have no way to know that anyone that's offering input actually lives in Kent. Just because someone uses the Kent Free Library does not mean they live in the city of Kent. So that's the other reason. We also want to survey administration and gather community input. There's just a lot right now. We just want to gather more input on these final three. And one of the reasons we wanted to produce the three flags, not only to see them, because they do look different in person than when they're on paper, but that was what I've seen in some of the other states. The state of Utah recently just completed a flag contest or a flag process, and that was what they did. They came up with 5 finalists. They actually produced the flags, and then they had displays set up all over the state where people could come and they could hold the flag, they could pull it out, and they could see what it looked like, and then offer their input, their choice, that kind of thing. And it really engaged the whole state. Obviously a much larger production than what we're doing here, but it gives you a good idea. And so we have, and the last one, obviously a potential media release, the city's website, the city's social media, press releases that area businesses can participate in this, that they can promote this at theirs. I know that there will be plenty that will be very interested in promoting this with us. The city marquee, as I said, please make sure it gets fixed. City Facebook page, other avenues, Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, all those wonderful things, all the community organizations that we really did see kind of jump into action this week. So we know that they're there, and we know that they're very connected. I mean, we saw how quickly the city can come together on something, so that was very encouraging for many other reasons. But even in this case, we have a network here that can get this out and get it going. But that is all I have. Did anyone have any questions? Yeah.
John, when you're displaying this, like at the library, will you be explaining the designs? Is that going to also be available to the general public? Like you explained exactly what the designs mean to us, will they have an opportunity to be able to look and understand what those designs mean on the flag?
My hearing's terrible, so.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I heard your question. So yes, that's part of the request for the budget was for signage. We would be creating one like 24 by 36 stanchion sign for each of the flags that would have kind of the same thing that's in your packets tonight.
Similar to this.
Yeah, that has like the picture and then the description of each of those points that we discussed.
So that will be available to the
Yeah,
general
correct.
public when they-
Directly next to the flag is the intention. Yep.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. So, so the 3 here, were any of these submitted from some of the 68 submissions?
Yes. All
Okay.
3 of them, the 2 of them came directly from, they were basically what the submission was. They were slight tweaks to them.
Okay.
And then the 3rd one with the red stars was from a submission, but it was very much kind of a committee as we tweaked it and it was altered significantly from its original, but it was based on, the concept came from a submission.
But
Yeah, it was basically.
were they all altered, though, from like an original submission, each of these 3?
Each of these
Like, are any of these 3 directly from a submission that we received
Yes.
from one of the 68? Identical to what was some,
Mine is the shape, for the bird.
And we have.
so
Yeah, one of them, Jen Mapes is right there. She submitted the one that looks like the K with the black triangle.
okay.
The only change that we made to it as a committee was it was put into the Burgee shape instead of the rectangle.
Okay.
Because we tried it in different things and that's how it kind of evolved as we looked at it, and it was like, wow, because of the way that it was shaped, it fits that very well. And then we had other submissions from around the community, and I know Zach submitted the one that was crossed. And then the submission that came from one of his submissions, blinking right here. They also, that was where at least one of his submissions was used, and there were several other submissions, not a specific one, that kind of merged into that one. It wasn't necessarily like this one and that one.
Got it.
There several, and again, a lot of the submissions did kind of overlap each other. And that's why we could kind of mush some of them together, because some of them repeated the same thing. They kept repeating the same colors or the same design element.
So 2 of these submissions are from board members, and then 1 person is from, one submission, excuse me. Okay, so don't kill me. Don't be angry. I'm just wondering with 68, and maybe this is a question for council's consideration, with 68 submissions, and if we're going to do a ranked choice sort of looking at it, and if the state of Utah had 5, perhaps we could add a couple more submissions of perhaps some runner-up designs for people to look at it. I think 68 submissions is kind of actually a little bit extraordinary. I'm really excited, and I have talked to some people in the community that submitted, and they were likewise really excited, and there was a lot of intentionality to their design and what they thought it should mean, and there was a lot of just like general like really kind of feel-good community enthusiasm. So I guess from my point of view, I would just love to see just a couple of more submissions, even just for discussion and conversation if they're going to be on display at the library, things like that. So if it were possible to do like a, what is the psychological study, 7 ± 2 is where people can draw from, and if we're doing ranked choice, that doesn't seem like that would do a whole lot of harm there, upset the apple cart too much, I hope.
Again, this kind of goes back to the whole process that we've been doing for the last 6 months, that there's been people have submitted it, and then they've kind of left us alone, and they haven't said anything about it. And no one's responded to any, so we're putting all this work in. And I think it's important to know that all the committee members had submissions. I had a submission as well. It was not
I
chosen.
made a submission.
But, and so when we looked at this submission, we didn't go, oh, that's his. We're gonna pull that aside. It was really like, how do we rank these? We looked at them all individually as designs, and we ranked them. The reason we kind of picked on 2 or 3, and for a while we just wanted 2, is when we get to this point, when you get 5 and stuff, what it ends up doing is you don't get a decision. You get again, even with 3, we're going to have a potential that you could have a third that like each one, and then you never really have a flag or any choice that people really, that's what it did. Utah, that was their decision, and you're talking about a state of 2 million people versus a city of about 30,000 people. And I think with this one, the point of the committee was to kind of get things narrowed down so that we could bring you guys some choices and then bring the community choices, like limited choices, because the more choices you have, the more difficult it's going to be to make a decision about what we do next, because if we have too many choices, it just makes it that much more difficult. And again, anyone that has interacted with people in the community, please encourage them to participate in the process. It makes it a lot easier for us when we do have more input coming directly from people here, rather than after we've done all the work and then they come in and say, well, I don't like that. Well, where were you in the process?
Well, in defense of our residents, I didn't know when you were meeting, and I tend to pay attention. So maybe it's just
the same people that come to these meetings.
So
if they know about city council, they can find that. And I think that's what's important. Is like people that really wanted to, they were able to find out about the flag process, and it was not secret. I think it's important. But I think with the choices, again, they were all, even the 3 that you see here, it wasn't just we picked them and then we plopped them in front of you. They were taken, they were altered, they were discussed extensively, they were tweaked, they were flipped around, and we tried about 15 different options on each one of them, and this is what we finally got to. So it was quite a refining process, and I think that's why we'd be hesitant to add more, because we wouldn't just be dropping more in. We would just be they would have to be refined and discussed as designs, and whether they work the way they are. Because what you see in front of you are not the way they were submitted. All 3 of them. None of them were submitted like that.
Roger?
Yeah, John, first of all, you and the committee, thank you. This has not been an easy process, obviously. You put in a lot of time. Would it be helpful to put that criteria in? Because I think I'd like to know, for instance, of the 60+ designs that you have, how many did have the symbols, the had
I can have that. I
yeah,
have that on a spreadsheet.
I think that's important for people to see, because I think that what Gwen's driving at is a lot of people probably didn't understand that there are approaches to flags that are different than, for me, I would have thought, the grain silos, the river, split everything up on there. I think that's what the average person thinks. They get their in their own minds. What does Kent mean to them personally? So I think that if there was a way, and I guess I'm more asking you, do you think there's a way that if you're going to put up the different flags that you've kind of narrowed it down to, but also maybe some of the other flags with an explanation of why all this stuff is important, we've tried to symbolize it in those things? Because I think that's, I don't know, do you think that's possible? And how much is it going to cost us to do that?
That can definitely be
that
part.
on the table too, right?
That can definitely be part of the campaign that we do, particularly the website that we will have to use to gather information from residents or from anyone. And really, I hesitate to use residents. It's just because there's no way we can guarantee that anyone participating in this is a resident of Kent, and there's no real way that we can control that. It's just area people. And that's easily something we can do. The spreadsheet that I have it was submitted, and every flag is printed out. It's part of the city's record, and all the data that came with them. And so there's quite a bit of that, and it does. And I can give you the actual the spreadsheet, like how many times Cuyahoga River showed up out of the 68. And I think it's important to understand with the 68 designs, that's not necessarily 68 people. I think when I actually narrowed it down, it was about 35 people that actually submitted, because several people submitted like 5 designs each. And so, or 2, or 1, or they submitted like 3 variants of their design. And so 68 was the total number of design, but it was not 68 people. It was roughly about 30, I think it was 33 or 35 people submitted designs total. And of them, many of them did identify where they live. And I know that several they were like, I live in Stowe, I live out west, or they went to Kent State, they're from Kent, they grew up here. And so it wasn't, from a residential thing, it was very few actual residents of Kent actually submitted flag designs. And I think that's, again, does it matter? No, all that matters was that the design was there and what we used. But yes, I can do all that. And we can give people a little bit of idea of the process. We want people to understand the process that we went through, that we didn't just look at the flag designs and throw them all out, or that we just discarded them. They were very much, this whole room, if you guys had been here, like there were days that the entire 2 tables were filled with flag design, going over it, and us going through, marking which ones we like, which ones we didn't like, why we didn't like them, what we liked about them, what we didn't like about them, every one of them. And so that was that we will very much, we're great to share them, but we need to move on.
Garrett?
Yes.
John, at first I'd say thanks for all your help. Obviously, it's a ton of work, and the process is laborious. So how would you answer somebody's comment, or how would you respond to somebody's comment that says, we're picking, there's no variation. There's 3 very similar flags. And
when you look at any type of flag design that has basic symbols, there's going to obviously be, you can say the same thing when we look at Ohio's flag versus the U.S. flag. They're both red, white, and blue. They both have stars. They both have stripes. But they're very different. They're very distinct. And I think with these, all 3 designs, yes, they have similarities between them, but they are very different from each other in terms of the meanings. But the symbolism, again, why are they all going to have, are they all going to look similar? Yes, they are, because that was based on all the data we gathered of the same symbols, the overwhelming feeling from the community of these symbols, these colors. Okay, that was why I think that's the biggest reason they're going to be similar, is just that they are all the same colors, and so that's basically, yes, they're going to be similar, but
okay, so I'll be that person then. I would say, well, I understand where you're coming from, but why wouldn't we have let's call this a modernist interpretation of those symbols? Can't we see a more classical representation of those symbols?
Can you repeat the question?
if I were the guy that had asked you that question and that you just gave your response and I replied back, I understand the symbols, but what I see is a modernist interpretation of those symbols. Could we not see a more classical representation of those symbols?
Okay.
What would your reply be to that?
I would ask them to define what they mean by classical symbol.
And I would say, how about a silhouette of the arches on the bridge, the silhouette of the grain silos? Instead of a blue bar representing the river, why not some type of meandering symbol that's the river?
And my response would be, again, when we look at the basics of flag design, pictures can often be very powerful things. They don't often look good on flags. Why? Because flags are generally on the top of a pole far away. And so to someone outside of here, if they see a representation of the mill, no one's going to know what that is from a distance. It's going to look like kind of a funky shaped thing or white lines. Could we symbolize the mill in ways that are more flag appropriate? Absolutely. But that actually very rarely ever came up. Same with the bridge. The bridge really didn't come up that much as a major symbol of Kent. And what we did see was a lot of flag designs did come, and they made awesome logos. We had one that we totally want to recommend that you use on the background of your website. That it used the mill, it used the downtown thing. It was an awesome logo. It was an awesome background. It would not have made an awesome flag. It was so busy and it was so colorful that you have no idea what you're looking at when it's waving in the breeze. And so with they're simple, but they still have things that you can distinctly say, oh, the river, oh, the railroad, things like that, the green, the city, the tree city, that kind of stuff. It's a simplicity because, again, you're going to see it like that, the way it is in the corner there, sitting. You're going to see it on the top of a pole. And so when you have a lot of pictures and things that people think about on a seal, it's really hard to tell. I mean, if you look at the Portage County flag that flies outside the courthouse here, there's a picture on it. Can't see it very well. Is a map of the county is on there. Nobody can see it because it's so far up there and it's so little.
I see your point, and I would say that you make a very valid point there. I guess I would still want to see something more classical. And I don't know what that is, but that's part of the process. And
again,
and don't think we're beating you up because you should have seen how we started with City Hall, right? The new City Hall. Right? So I want to be sensitive to everybody's time and efforts, and just we're not here to beat you up. It's just to ask questions. So,
oh no, these are good questions because, again, we have, and I said that at the beginning of our process, that we are going to get a lot of questions from people that are used to seeing things like seals on flags. Well, that's what it looks like. I thought that's what a flag is. And so that's what we're hoping, that's what our plan was here, and why we were all interested in it was we wanted to guide it to be something that was distinct yet simple, okay? So that it's very distinct and Kent without being just, we threw the city logo on a sheet type of thing, which was actually discussed.
Heidi? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, additionally, in response to your question, we did receive some flag design submissions that included, I guess, what you would call classical symbols that would be on it, like a tree or a shield that included something like a leaf or whatever. And we even discussed all of the submissions that you saw today, including some of those symbols. And what we found was it's really hard to kind of find one tree that looks good on a flag, or like one tree that doesn't complicate a design that's already strong on its own merit. And the other kind of extension to what John was saying that I would add is that we were kind of looking for a design that could be considered timeless as well. So not something that immediately already looks dated or looks like something that has been done lots and lots of other times, but something that could stand on its own in the city of Kent and be here for a number of years to come and not get dated.
Thank you.
I just want to address one thing I think you're actually saying, Garrett, between the lines, is that the flags, the three choices that were presented tonight, that they seem simple or maybe empty, or that there is like similar patterns, like with the lines and the Ks and the stars. And I think that's a very valid point, that when you look at all three submissions together, it does appear that there's a similar pattern that's happening here. I would just encourage that anyone that's listening or hearing and seeing the flags for the first time, that you actually Google just really great flags that are existing, because a lot of them just have lines, just have stars, and a lot of white space. So if you look at flag design, it goes back to those principal elements. And I think that maybe we're all reaching or grasping or desiring something big to happen here, and maybe something simple is actually the right move. And then also, I've been getting texts from the community of people that are watching tonight that the request has been a common over theme, and maybe addresses your point, Gwen, that they want to see all the 68 designs. And I think that is a very valid thing that is being requested, that no one else besides the people on the flag committee and the number of meetings that we've held have seen those 68 designs. I know that the Portager had an article. Do you know when that article was?
Which one?
The Portager article. It had about 20, October. All of them? All 68? I think it was just up to that point. There was another 3 weeks.
No, because it was done August 31st.
Okay. So maybe we should represent that as a opportunity to look at all the flag designs that were submitted, so people that did participate felt part of this process and can find the flag that they submitted and compare it to maybe the 3 finalists that are up for a nomination right now. Also, it could be part of the campaign when we make the boards. We can list those contributors. That could be something that we could dial in. And just for reference, I think we had 6 meetings or 7 meetings? 6 to 7 meetings that were on Facebook pages. If you are from Kent page, we posted it on the city website. All of those meetings were public. So, just like this meeting, right. And so if there was a lack of awareness, it's really because it lost maybe esteem or kind of like that oomph after the 4th of July kind of initiation of getting the submissions. So it kind of like lost the sounding board. Now, given the current circumstances and things that have just happened in light of the news this past week, I think the eyes and focus of Kent, and applause to the Kent Fire Department for acting so bravely and quickly in light of the Mills fire, maybe it's a very good point to bring up that we should re-engage the community with the flag, because there's a sense of pride for Kent and Kent strong, you know, being strong through this ordeal. So that's very valid, and maybe we could bring that up. I don't know, but just a thought.
Okay. Heidi?
Yeah, a couple thoughts. First, when I looked at these, I went, ooh, too abstract. But I want to say I really value your process and your knowledge, that you've taken the time to really educate yourselves about what makes good flag design. And here we are, all kind of amateurs, going, well, I want a squirrel on it. But I do want to say that one of the designs, and I will not say which one, really speaks a little bit more to our values and our vision of the future, and Kent as a destination, not just as something that's historical. So I want to say that that's kind of like, to me, what's really exciting about Kent is that we have, we're constantly developing a vision and recreating ourselves, but embracing our past. So I kind of like that sort of that sense of destination as well, where everything comes together in the middle somehow. White, I kind of went, but in light of the mill, we do have the big white grain towers. We could say that's in some ways significant.
I don't want to interrupt you directly, but one of the things, the understanding about white is that white can often mean a lack of space. It doesn't necessarily have to have a specific color symbolism with it. Many flags just have white on there, it's just the absence of color rather than we're putting this white stripe in here because we want something specified.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying, basically, and I guess I can make it into a question if I have to, but what I'm saying is that it's really important, the next step of your process is really important, because when I looked at these and went, oh gosh, abstract, but then I heard what the flags expressed, I think that's really important for the public to really engage with and to learn about that and to provide feedback, because, you know, we do have a certain sense of community that we want to be expressed by our flag. And I get it. It has to be simple. It has to, in a lot of ways, be abstract. But, you know, I just think that I want to say that getting to the next step here, engaging the public, is a very important part of it. And this is a start. I know that, but I think your plan going forward to get a budget together is a good one, as far as being able to kind of take the show on the road, so that then you can. I'm just curious, how are you going to get the public feedback? What is the mechanism?
So we have the three in your thing on the back. It'll show the very last part. What we would like the budget for is to have basically 3 by 5 foot flags created of each design, one of each, that are on a pole, kind of like the American flag in the back, and either 3 by 5 or 4 by 6, depending on whichever is better. Just a high quality thing that people can look at, they can touch, they can unfurl it and see what it looks like in front of them. And so that would need to cover those costs, as well as the pole and the base, which are not cheap. And then what we had talked about with the Kent Free Library, kind of just casually, just kind of touch base with them to see if this was even possible, and they seem open to the idea of having a display in the lobby or in the entryway to Kent Free Library and then with the information boards, basically, so easels for them and prints that have the design, basically what you saw on each slide, that has the picture of the design, and then the explanation for the design. And then there'll be a QR code that people can scan, or a website they can go to, that they can offer further input if they'd like, and see more of for more information, and that would where we can put all the past designs. We can put the process. We can put basically that slideshow. We can expand that slideshow a little bit, and people can see what's been going on behind the scenes. Because again, I think what's important to understand, what I said at the very beginning of this process, is we're never going to come to a flag that everybody loves. There's not going to be a 100% loving thing. It might not even be 90%, but it's going to be more that just kind of the consensus, just kind of, hey, I can live with that.
So are you going to get are you going to take written feedback? Are you going to take, I mean, that's my question, is how are you going to gather the feedback and then take that and utilize it? You're going to take it to various meetings. Are you going to have some way that the public can make comments at the library or online?
So what the intention was to use some kind of tool such as SurveyMonkey to offer a ranked choice vote and a comment box where somebody could add their input, and then that would be collected by the committee into, like a spreadsheet basically it dumps it into, and the committee would then discuss all of that input and use it in our decision making going forward, obviously. But then there would also be the option, we could do printed out slips that people can drop in a box at the library if they don't want to vote online. That's another thing that we could do. We hadn't discussed that before, but that's something we could do as well. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure if I addressed everything there or not.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I just really wanted to know the specific mechanisms that you were going to gather input. And if people come and talk to us, which they likely will, how do we get that information to you?
Call me. You can email us.
Call.
Yeah.
Well, we've got representation.
Amy can email us.
We've got
Right, yeah.
representation on council.
We're all in regular contact with Amy, or Tracy and Mike both are on the committee, so they would obviously be a good
That
way to
makes
get
sense.
info.
That makes sense. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that. Thank you.
Robin?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I was a little concerned initially about the classical representations that would be on the flag, because I thought that would probably overpopulate it and be more of a distraction at the end of the day. The clean and modernistic approach with explanation works. Once it was explained to me, the convergence of a lot of the symbols, what those actually morph into, I thought that was very good. And I think that at the end of the day, while we would like to see squirrels and nuts and all that kind of stuff run around because it has an immediacy to it for our ability to recognize things. It's not a flag. We don't have that on the United States flag. It has stars, it has stripes. It's explained to us what that all means, our history, the convergence of all of those things and what that represents. By doing what you did on the flag with the colors, with the abstraction of design, the kind of modernistic approach, the cleanliness of it, I think actually at the end of the day represents what a flag really should be, and creates an ability of, once it's explained, because most people are looking at things, they might recognize a couple of things, the flag, and maybe it's nice to see, like I said, the river. But there's also the redundancies represent the consistency of what we all feel represent our community. So you're going to get that on every flag ultimately. I mean, you come down, the colors, what these all represent, people say, well, they kind of are very alike. Well, they're alike because our city has symbols that represent the community. Those are going to be redundant. And so at the end of the day, I think you've done well. I don't know necessarily that we have to look at 68. That's why we established a committee to distill it. So I guess we'll argue about it. That's what we do as a council. But, very good. I'm very appreciative of all the work you guys put in on this.
Thank you.
And it's well done.
Tracy?
Yeah, I kind of like Gwen's idea of adding 2 more designs, though, to it. If we have ranked choice preferences, I think that will take care of the 30%, each one gets 30% split, because then you can put your first preference and then your second preference, so then we won't have that problem. And expand it to more, I mean, especially since 2 of the designs came from committee members. It'd be nice to have 2 more designs that came from other people in the community.
The only reason I hesitate is just the amount of time that's going to add on to this, because that's a whole nother meeting. Because remember, these 3 designs are not, we didn't just pull these out of something. These were hammered out from designs. And so it wasn't just like, we just picked, oh, here's our top 3, here's the vote, we're done. There was at least 2 meetings that we had to get these 3 final, the way they look now, because they didn't look like that when they were submitted. I think that's, again, when it sounds simple, but it's not. It's very complicated, and then we go, okay, well then what do we do? Where do we go? And which direction do we go? And then if it's the same committee, we're going to end up with roughly similar looking things. We're not going to just throw in some wild card here that we don't like just because we want to assuage a feeling or two about, so that people feel like, again, as I said, I submitted designs myself. I have studied flags. I wanted more than anything to have my design chosen, but even as the leader of the group, it was clearly not something that was discussed, and it was not a design that was favored, so we moved on. I didn't push for it. You can ask Sam, I barely even talked about it. and stuff like that. When his design, the one with the star in the middle, his design, it was just something that we all went, wow, I really like this. It wasn't like, oh, this is Zach's design, let's put that aside and we'll keep that. And honestly, Jen's design was one of the first ones we got. I think it was the second one we got. And so we had seen that from the beginning, and we really, and we talk about the classical design. We went through a whole meeting where we actually put things into that. We flipped the colors on it, and what would we decide? Basically what she submitted, other than the shape of the flag. We did not change it. It didn't look right. It ruined the symbolism of it. And so that's why I'm a little hesitant to agree to additional flag designs, just because this is a very long process just to get to the 3, and I think that it's just going to kind of undermine what we've already done and just make it, it's just going to prolong it even further.
We started it 2 years ago.
Heidi?
Yeah, so moving to next steps. How much funding do you need and when?
The estimate that we have now, having just kind of it would be roughly about $1,000 just to do all that. Do I anticipate that we will spend all $1,000? No. But making a flag alone would be about between $100 and $150 each, because it's going to be a larger flag. It's not going to be just printed on a bed sheet. It's going to be, I've looked into that myself. I'm a flag person, and so and especially when you make a single flag like that, it tends to be more expensive just because they have to do it for one thing. They have to get it set up.
Is that something you're asking for today, or are you going to come back?
Well, we have our next meeting is, I forget when now.
January 11th is our next meeting.
So not even necessarily by that date, although it would be helpful if we had a number by then so we could discuss our plans. That is ultimately what the point of that meeting is to discuss plans moving forward.
Okay, we have a budget.
Yeah. Because we knew that it would be presented tonight. We did not expect it to be approved tonight.
Gotcha.
I can reassure you, we certainly can cover that. That's not an unreasonable ask, and not to extend the conversation, but I do want to say, I've been in enough cities. We didn't really do specifically the flags like this, but I've been around it long enough. We are really lucky to have the caliber of people. I can tell you, this is way beyond anything. This is what you would normally pay $25,000, $30,000 for. And the advice they're giving you is spot on, as much as it's painful. And I totally get what Garrett said, but that's not what the flag design is about. That's about maybe, like he said, something else, bumper stickers, and those are great bumper stickers. But flag design, good flag design is simplistic. And like he said, for all those reasons, the functional reasons. And he's not just saying that for the first time. I mean, we've heard that. I've heard that. So I just want to say they're not pushing some personal agenda here. I hope you've sensed that. This is a really top-shelf group, and I'm greatly appreciative. So they saved us $25,000. We can find $1,000.
Don't ask for the other 24, though.
Yeah. Buddy, you can leave a little more.
Okay, anybody from the, any other questions? Anybody from the audience? You don't have to sign up. Come up, Jen, and state your name and address, please, for the record.
Hi, Jen Mapes, 804 South DePeyster Street. So the only thing I was saying was that I agree with the idea of maybe creating a board with your $1,000 budget of showing all of the entries so that people can see how the similarities. And I was thinking maybe just because I think like a designer, but like it'd be cool to make your spreadsheet into an infographic.
Oh,
so I might be volunteering, but maybe not. If one of you guys is a graphic designer, then all in favor of you guys doing it. Because I saw this and I was like, I'm going to spend as little time as possible on this because I could go down a rabbit hole. But thanks.
Anybody else from the audience? I would like to thank you all for the hard work you've put in here. I taught geography for a number of years, and we studied flags like crazy, and you're absolutely right. Look at the flags of every country of the world. 95% of them are done with symbols. They're not done with squirrels or whatever else on there. So thank you so much for all your work. We appreciate it.
Yeah, nice job. Nice job, nice job.
Okay. The next item on the committee as a whole agenda is the update on the City Hall construction project. Melanie?
Good evening. My report's going to be a little short tonight. We just continue to keep moving forward. Pleased to say that unknowns are pretty much done. We're up and out of the ground, so we're moving past those unknowns that are typically under the ground, so that's pretty exciting. We've leveled out in finding out how long things are going to take, so we've ordered most of our materials at this point to get us through the first quarter to first half of next year, and we're anticipating those deliveries to be on time. We're continuing with our underground utilities, both in the council chambers as well as under the office area. They'll be done sleeving those at the end of this week. If you notice, there was an opening in the wall where we were using the large equipment to get down in to be able to do that. That's being eliminated this week. And we are on schedule for next Tuesday to begin doing our steel erection. So we're pretty excited about that. So barring any weather conditions that would hold us back from that, we'll begin doing that as well. The last item too is, if you remember, I came early on in this discussion, but we needed to have an extension of a gas main from DePeyster down to us, and that is also scheduled to begin work. They're coming out tomorrow to do their final look at it, and that should also begin next Tuesday as well. So it's good news. We're continuing to move, and I do feel like there's progress from week to week now. I think you can clearly see it as the elevator shaft is completely up, both stairwells are done. So it is getting exciting. I hope that you can begin to see, especially from the corner, what that front is going to look like and what that is beginning to feel like. So pretty exciting.
Questions for Melanie? Anybody from the audience? Thanks, Melanie. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, the third item is Parks and Recreation Open House.
I think Angela's back there.
Angela?
Yeah, she's there.
Yeah.
Good evening. We're here for Kent Parks and Recreation to provide an update on our master plan study that we're currently conducting. The last master plan study was completed all the way back in 1995, so I think we're a little overdue. We've been working with Branstetter Carroll for almost the past year, and we're trying to wrap things up here so that we can get all of the public input and feedback from our surveys and our open houses and get those put into a report form so that we have something to work with planning our 5-year plan for the department. So Oliver, I wanted to introduce him because nobody here has met him. He is our new full-time Marketing and Special Events Coordinator in the Parks and Recreation Department. That is a new full-time position that you approved for 2022. So thank you. And it's been working out really well. So he's going to provide an update and extend an invitation to you to our next open house.
Thank you, Angela.
You're welcome.
So as she said, we're hosting an open house. So my name's Oliver Wench. I actually was a part-timer here when I was a student at Kent State, so I never wanted to leave. There wasn't a full-time position, so it all worked out, and I'm back, and I'm very happy to be back. So yeah, as Angela mentioned, we're in the middle of a planning process for our master plan, and right now what that looks like is, I did bring a couple of boards. They're not necessary to see, but I'm just going to show them around as I kind of talk. But so we're in the planning process. And I'll turn around over here too. We're in the community engagement phase. So basically what that means is we're doing a lot of stakeholder meetings. We're having an open house. We're doing an open survey for anybody to answer. And our goal is to collect data that we can then use to create a master plan and a vision moving forward for our department. As she said, the last master plan was 1995. In fact, I was looking at it when I was going through old boxes, getting some stuff for an awards application, and saw the exact data. It was really interesting to see, but we're hoping to do a similar thing and maybe have it not be 30 years old before we do the next one. So I want to invite everybody on the council, everybody here in person, anybody in the public's invited. Our next open house is actually tomorrow evening, 6 to 8, at the Roy Smith Shelter House at Fred Fuller Park. It's a few short activities. I know a lot of people might think, oh, it's going to be a sit-down, 2-hour thing where I got to stay for the whole time. No. You come, it's Parks and Rec. That's not how we do things. You come in, 5 to 10 minutes of your time, you're out. It's very short. I'll kind of touch on the little activities that we have, but we'd love to get your input. You know, you guys are all leaders in the community, obviously, so your input means a lot to us, and then as well as any residents. I mean, this is the kind of stuff, if you have input, now's the time. This is how we're planning our future. The activities that we have, when you come in, you sign in, you'll get a little packet, not even a packet, a little handful of things. We'll have a map that's on a board. We have all these boards that'll be on easels. You can put a little dot where you live. If you don't live in the city, it's not limited to just Kent residents. There's people that don't go to Kent, especially in our sports. They don't live in Kent. They come from other communities. So anybody can come in. You get a little dot, put it on the map where you live. That's simple as that. Takes 30 seconds. That's activity 1. You also get 3 different colored stickers. So another little example of what that looks like. We'll have these boards out that have different activities. This one is actually park features or amenities. So that could be a rec center. That could be a splash pad. That could be pickleball courts. That could be dog park, anything like that. So we have one for both park features and amenities and one for programs. So you get 3 stickers, and you literally stick your sticker on your 3 most important things that are on the board. So that's activity 2. 3, you get a stack of 10 100 fake dollar bills. We'll have boxes lined up, and basically what you get to do is you get to say, hey, if I have $1,000 of these things, what would I invest the money of Kent Parks and Rec into? You can put all $1,000 into one thing. If you really think that we just need to put all of our money into trails, you can do that. You have that power. If you want to split it up, 100 in each one, you can. And that's a good way to show us what does the community want us to spend money on. Because obviously some things, you know, cost more than others. But that's activity 3, super simple activities. And the last thing is there's just going to be sheets of paper laid out, and you can tell us, hey, what is Kent Parks and Rec doing well? What are they struggling at? It's important to identify both what we're doing well now, that way we can take that and learn from that and advance upon that, and take a look at what we're struggling with and say, hey, we're not meeting the needs in this section. You know, there's barriers that we're not overcoming. How can we do better? And it's as simple as that. It shouldn't take more than 5 to 10 minutes. All of our staff will be there to answer questions to help out. We will also have little physical or little cards that have QR codes to fill out the survey online, as well as paper surveys for in-person people. That will still be open as well. That asks a couple different questions, get some more demographic information. That's been open for a while. We've gotten quite a few responses. But yeah, it should take 5 to 10 minutes in and out. Our goal is not to keep you. Our goal is to collect data. Again, this is huge for us to try to get data that we can then use to back things up. I was talking to Angela before we came over, and it's having this data is something that helps us, because then we can use this when we're applying for grants, when we're applying for statewide awards for recognition. Using this kind of data is going to put us ahead of other Parks and Rec organizations in the line of getting that data or that funding and whatnot. So that's really what I have. Again, it's tomorrow night, Roy Smith Shelter House, 6 to 8 p.m. We'll be there the whole time. Again, 5 to 10 minutes. That's what I have. If you guys have any questions.
Questions for Oliver? Heidi?
Yeah, so is this going to be a one-shot deal, or, you know, are people going to be able to, okay, I can't attend tomorrow night, and I just heard of it. Is there going to be, do you have other open house type models? I really like it, by the way. I think this is great. I think the way you structure it is great, but you have to give people, in my opinion, lots of options.
Sure. So this is our second. The first one was about a month and a half ago at this point. This is our second one now. And if we do find that the attendance is too low and it's not meeting our standards, there's a chance we'll host a third. I can't speak on that right now just because it hasn't happened yet. Hopefully we don't need to, and that's where the survey does come in. The survey isn't a direct replacement of the open house. This is slightly different. There's more ranked choice stuff here going on. It's not collecting the demographic information that the survey is, but the survey does overlap a lot of this information. So because of that, we will have that survey online, and that will stay open. I'm not sure exactly how long. It's dependent on results and whatnot, but so I can't say that we will for sure have another open house, but we will always have that survey, at least for the time being, that can also be filled out online or in person.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Gwen?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the Parks and Rec Department has been doing a tremendous amount of work soliciting feedback and getting feedback and making adjustments in the department. I congratulate Angela and all the hard work she's doing, and Oliver is doing a fantastic job, as is everybody else over there. Is it too premature that we can share a little bit of information about the bicycle news? This is why you shouldn't tell me.
You just did, I think.
Don't tell me secrets if you can. So.
It's in motion, and I will say it would have been coming to you at some point. But the city, we were contacted by an organization called GOBA, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. It's the Great Ohio Bicycle Association. I may have screwed a little bit of that up, but they are in their 34th year of having, it's basically a week-long adventure, and they pick a route where they bike for 7 days, and they hit different cities. They usually have, I think, 800 to 1,000 bikers who participate. They have never been to Northeast Ohio, and so they've really been putting the pressure on their president to try and get up to Northeast Ohio. So they did come up with a route. They have been in contact with myself and with the Chamber of Commerce. So it looks like they may be coming the Wednesday and I think it's a Wednesday, Thursday, third week in June. Part of what really was going to determine this is about 60% of their riders camp. They have trucks that follow them with all of their belongings. They have trucks that come in with bathhouses and showers. They want to provide activities, so they wanted to be able to walk to the downtown area, be able to go to the restaurants, be able to enjoy entertainment or an outdoor concert, which will line up perfectly with the Hometown Bank concert series this year. So we did find a spot that was suitable for them to camp overnight on park property. And I think the other 30%, I think they're in the process of booking block rooms at the hotel downtown for the rest of them. So it'll be a nice event, I think. So they'll also engage with local food trucks, so that they'll have food trucks greeting the bikers as they come into town. They'll have shuttles in place that will shuttle them to go around and tour, different attractions. I know one of them was the memorial at Kent State. So they have, they'll come up with a whole itinerary. I know Michelle's very involved from the chamber, so we're really excited. So we're in the process of reviewing contracts and agreements, but it looks like it should be a go. So.
How many people do they normally?
Last year was their first ride post-COVID, and they had 800. So they're expecting to get back up to their pre-COVID numbers, which would be at least 1,000.
That's great.
Wow, that'd be great.
Be great.
And the nice thing, it's a nice group, and they said, they've been doing this for so long. They're like a well-oiled machine. They come in and they leave, and they said they leave no footprint behind. So.
Super cool.
Yeah. So there'll be more to come on that.
Questions? Audience, any questions? Thanks, Angela, and thank you, Oliver.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Nice job.
Okay, you're up.
That'd be cool.
That's exciting.
Those bikers, though.
I got something more exciting. Zoning code text amendments. Sit still. Wow. Yeah, settle down. Please, quiet.
Thank you for that opening.
Yeah, the floor is yours.
I do want to say, John, I sympathize with you on the attendance at public meetings. I can definitely sympathize. This is here for proposed text amendment. The Community Development Department was contacted by a design professional working for a local establishment, requesting consideration of a new land use category that would allow for a limited food use be added to a microbrewery. I do want to clarify at this point, because a lot of times people throw terms around. Bell Tower is a restaurant. The square footage is primarily used for food production and food service. A microbrewery is primarily alcohol production. It can be mead, it can be a distillery, but it is alcohol production in a microbrewery. Microbreweries are allowed in our industrial district, in our commercial district, and in our RTO, our Research, Technology, and Office, which used to be our industrial research area. They are permitted uses in the industrial, but conditionally permitted in the C and in the RTO districts. So the proposed text amendment would create a new land use category called microbreweries limited food service. This was discussed with Planning Commission on October 18th. It was originally scheduled for October 4th, which is referenced in your memo, but lack of a quorum of commission members resulted in us moving it to the August 18th discussion with Planning Commission. So the microbrewery limited food service, the one thing that staff looked at when we were looking at this was to ensure that it is not a restaurant, because a restaurant is different. It has different zoning district requirements, so we wanted to make sure that it was limited and ancillary to the primary alcohol production. So if you see on the list, I won't go through them all because I want Garrett to stay awake.
Everybody else.
But I will point out the most relevant, which is the addition of the conditions, which section 1105-37, which was in the zoning code. So chapter 1105 is our conditions, which apply to any land use. It's extensive, and so we pulled out just the section for the microbreweries. The blue text would be added for microbreweries limited food service. And as you can see, the black and the green are existing in the code. So it has on-site production of alcoholic beverages is required. That is what sets it apart from a restaurant. We will be requesting the striking of only microbreweries approved for a restaurant use may produce, prepare, serve, or sell food, because that is not, that was put in there to clarify a microbrewery separate from a restaurant. But if we're adding a new land use of microbreweries limited food service, we added a new condition, which is item 2, to replace that. And I will read it just so it's on the record. Microbreweries that include an interior tap room may provide limited food service, but such food service must be ancillary to the primary use of alcoholic beverage production. Ancillary is defined and limited to no more than 30% of the available interior square footage to be utilized for food prep and service. That is to ensure that it is limited. In the current proposed request that came to us, it was specific to a set use. Zoning code amendments have to be applied totality across the entire city. So we explained that to them, and I can tell you in that example, they're looking at utilization of potentially 11%. We did 30% because remember, it doesn't mean they're going to build up to 30%. We put a cap because 30% of a 1,000 square foot facility is very different than 30% of a much larger facility in a converted warehouse in an industrial district. So at this point, I can take questions on the proposed text amendment.
Questions from council? Roger?
Bridget, does this impact the oversight by our health department at all?
It would, just like everything else. So anything that would be adding a component with food service, absolutely, is
Okay.
it's going to, and of course, building code as well. So basically, once the zoning code amendment, if it is authorized by council tonight with emergency, takes effect in 2 weeks, it would have to go through all of the submissions that would go through the health department and the building department.
Okay, thank you.
Heidi?
Yeah, I'm seeing sale of alcoholic beverages is limited to only what is produced on site. Something I've noticed in a lot of regional microbreweries are that they often have guest brews, like they they'll have their brew somewhere else, and that other place will have theirs there. Does that?
You can have a guest tap, but you have to be producing. And if you're producing, I'm betting you're going to want to sell your product. Our microbrewery is specific to production. You have to remember it is production as if you were producing noodles or widgets or whatever else it might be. It just happens to be a consumable product that we would intake. So we have that specifically because what we don't want is, quite honestly, the beer wall, that DP Dough, that is a restaurant.
Yeah.
That is not a microbrewery. They can have 50 taps in there. They could represent every microbrewery in our city and in Northeast Ohio. But in the definition of land use in the zoning code, that would be considered a restaurant because they're not producing it on site.
Yeah, I get that, but they could have a guest tap.
Yes, a guest
Okay.
tap. We would never, we would never prohibit a guest tap.
Okay,
It
thank
would
you.
only be if they transition to stopping production and going to selling others. Then it would become, basically, at that point, it could potentially be a store or a restaurant, and that is prohibited or conditionally permitted in certain areas.
Further from council? Anyone from the audience? Back to council?
I would move to approve the zoning changes.
I'll
Wait,
second that.
you need emergency?
Emergency.
Thank you.
I'll second it with the emergency.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes Land Use Committee. Thank you.
Hope's not here.
No, I got it. I got it.
Okay.
Yep, I told her, she's not feeling well. She apologizes, and she does. She sounds terrible. I was joking and saying, is that your sexy voice or what? there? She can't speak very well. But she's actually been texting me if her items come up yet. But this is an annual, I told her, I think I got this one. This is just an annual renewal of the contract that we have with the Portage County Public Defender's Office. So when we arrest folks here in the city that meet the qualifications, the income eligibility requirements for a public defender's office, the county provides that service on our behalf, and Hope said that it can vary depending on arrests in a given year, but it's probably a good ballpark number is about $4,000 a year. So we're just asking for your renewal for 2023 with the emergency.
Questions from council? Anyone in the audience has a question? Back to council.
Move to approve with
Second.
emergency.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Now we're at.
Oh, here we
Oh,
go.
this one's going to be a little
Oh,
longer.
yeah.
It's going to be more exciting than Bridget's.
I'm not sure about that.
Aw, I thought Bridget was exciting.
Yeah.
Hers is more fun.
Well, just remember, Dave Coffey got his done in 5 minutes, his last one. So you're on the clock. I did want to say, I told her, she's like, you're going to say a few opening remarks, aren't you? So I offered to do that. I'm sure you've studied my message in and out, and I don't need to say all this stuff. But in the manager's message, it is, I mean, right? Every time we think we get it dialed in on the previous year, the next year changes. Whether, obviously, COVID was a major disruptor, so that turned a lot of things upside down on us. But and we're still sorting through that, and I guess we're in the new normal, whatever that is going to be. What's been particularly interesting, I think, in terms of this closing out 2022 and heading into 2023, is we have seen a pretty significant, by all comparisons, income tax increase. Receipts and income taxes are steadily up all year long, and even to the point where they're pre-COVID up. I mean, we know we took a hit during COVID, but they're back above pre-COVID numbers, and that's obviously a great thing. I mean, we're grateful for that. It's a little interesting, too, that it's not, so often, I know John said it in his remarks, so often we think immediately, well, we're Kent State, home of Kent State University, so they're driving that bus. But in this case, they're not. The revenue growth, the income tax growth that we're seeing is actually outside of Kent State. So there are businesses that are doing well. And maybe it's some of the wage pressures. I don't know. Maybe people are being paid more. I mean, frankly, Kent State let people go, so it's a smaller amount. They're probably, they're heading in the other direction, actually, as a percentage share. But again, we've always said in the message, look, diversification's a good thing. Even though, for the most part, higher education's fairly recessionary proof, fairly. although I guess you could argue when things change in Columbus and administrations change the level of support for higher ed, that definitely causes some flux. And quite honestly, and Bridget knows this because she's lived and breathed it with the demographic stuff, we're at that cliff of student bodies, head counts. Everybody's competing for a dwindling number of students. So it's not particularly surprising to see some of the enrollment numbers get smaller. And what does that mean for the future? I don't know. But again, it's relatively recessionary proof. They had their early retirements. We took a big, we're feeling those consequences over the last couple of years of a fairly significant reduction in employees up there. And the ones that they're bringing, they are hiring new people, but they tend to be lower paid. So while that dynamic's going on, it's nice to see some diversification, some growth in the other sectors in our community. On the flip side of that, for the first time that I can remember here, we have to talk about the fact that inflation is outpacing even our healthy growth. So I was hoping to have this great sunny message in the budget. We have higher income tax receipts and everything's all well and good, and we're still at record historic lows in interest rates and all the, forget it, inflation's back up. And so it's like a mixed message. The message is, yeah, our income taxes are up, but they're actually still trailing the rate of inflation. So you could make the case that we're losing ground. And Melanie has shared some of that, obviously, in terms of like buying supplies and materials for the building. And Jim Bowling talked about that with his projects. You know, the 10% increases, and we're having, you know, having to rebid sometimes, like we did in City Hall. So it is a mixed message budget. I still feel good about the fact that our income taxes are up. That seems to be a positive sign, and I can't control the Fed rates all that well, so we'll just try to continue to be competitive with our rising income taxes. We're not immune to the same pressures, obviously, that everybody else is dealing with. Everything's costing more for us. We're still a year and a half away from negotiating the next round of union negotiations, but I can only imagine that as the wage pressures have been seen in the private sector, they'll gradually be seen in the public sector too. So all that is to say, as much as I'd like to present a really healthy, hearty budget that's spending on all our, you know, can go full bore, all cylinders towards our community priorities, that's not the message. It's still, we're honoring our commitments, but it's still a constrained budget. It's still very much a budget that I think probably all the department heads that are here could tell you how many more staff they feel like they need to hire, and you know, and I would love to be able to accomplish that. We're not quite ready to be able to do that in terms of being able to still balance the budget. There are some new changes in positions. Most of those have to do with what we believe is a more equitable assignment of personnel to categories, basically, particularly our department heads and some of our IT manager, HR manager, some of that stuff. And we'll present that. Suzanne will present that later. But those are pretty small. Those are marginal changes. They're incremental changes. There's nothing significant there. Most of those, all those things do, for the most part, is change the ceiling on certain employees that have been capped out. So it doesn't necessarily, it allows them some upward growth, which, as we've talked about in everything, attracting and retaining good talent is tough these days. And so part of what we're trying to do is make accommodations for that and remain competitive. So yeah, and the utility rates were presented in the capital budget, but those are at recommending 9% just to keep pace with inflation. And I'll remind you that it always sounds wrong to say good news in a rate increase, but the good news is it's still slightly below what was projected when you first approved the plan in terms of the math. As you moved it forward over the 10-year period, we've been able to slow down rate increases in previous years, which has now saved folks some money but this year we're definitely almost back to where we would be on the original plan. So I'm hopeful that some of the inflation will change, but I can't promise that. And Tom's not here tonight, but he joked, he gets the same income tax reports that Rhonda sends out, and he's like, well, I can guarantee continued income tax growth for the next, 5 months until I retire. After that, you're on your own. So, yeah, with that, I guess I'll turn it to Rhonda. She'll give you the details to the level that you desire. Like I said, I don't think you're going to see any significant changes in there.
Correct. Thank you. So under the Budget Overview tab, on page 1-1, like Dave said, the income tax revenue for 2022, we revised the budget to $18,300,000, and that is a 9.37% increase over 2021. We didn't increase too much for 2020 or at all for 2023, just because of the looming recession. We just wanted to stay conservative, so didn't want to get too drastic with that, but hopefully we'll have a revised number for that next year as well. The other point of interest on 1-1 is under the subtotal of federal, state, and local aid. You'll notice that the dollar amount has gone down pretty much significantly, $10 million. That's due to the fact that the ARPA money, there's no more ARPA money coming through, and the grants that we have listed here are the ones that we're aware of at this point. So there could be more going forward. Then going forward on 1-5, this is an explanation of, or a detailed page for our expenditures. You'll notice that the expenses for 2023 have increased to $58 million. There is a timing difference between when we receive the revenue and when the expenditures actually have to be paid out. So that's why our expenditures on 1-5 are much higher than the revenues that we're anticipating coming in, because remember, when we did the bond issue for City Hall was last year, those monies have already been received. Now we're starting to spend those dollars. Same with the ARPA money. We received those over the last 2 years. Now we have to start spending it, and that's what's included in here. And the biggest jump on this page, you'll see total capital is $18 million, which is an increase of $5.7 million, and that's pretty much the ARPA dollars. If you see the ARPA fund kind of midway down the page, the ARPA fund capital expenditures are $5.6 million almost. The other thing that I wanted to notice, the other increases on this page are basically due to the increases in the union contracts, and then like Dave also said, increases in the supply and materials due to inflation. On 1-7, this is just a little bit more detail of those same expenditures by function or by area of the City Hall or the city as in a total. So say, for example, all the utilities are under basic utility, fire and police are under public safety, you have the police facility, etc. So just a little bit more different look at it is all. So I changed the way some of the pages were looking, just, I don't even know if you noticed, but some of the formatting, I tried to make it the book a little bit easier to read. So if you look at, as an example, 2-11 and 2-12, it's just a little bit more of a financial statement view to it. So I just tried to make it a little bit more feasible.
In which section, 211?
It's just look at under general government.
Okay, so that,
yeah, 2-11.
that page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a facing financial statement. It's just easier to read. So I just made a few changes to how it was formatted from last year to this year. Just a few little perks. Does anybody have any questions?
I do. This is about the increase in the water and the sewer. When we talked about it before, we said that we were going to add probably about $4 a month for the sewer and $3 a month for water. What's that based off of? Is that based off the average person's usage?
Yes.
So the average person's usage then on the next page is about $52 a month? And the average pay for water is $35 a month?
You're looking at the front
I'm
water?
looking at this thing.
You're looking at that one, yeah, and I didn't bring that with me, I don't think. But,
I actually didn't either. It's based on the usage, and it's what we just did is we took their the rates that we currently have and increased it by 9%, And then you still have the minimum usage of 3. So if they use 2, they're still going to get charged 3.
Right.
So yeah, they'll have that average bill.
Because for lower middle income people, adding $7 a month is going to be a lot of money right now. I've gone to stores and I've overheard people say that they're having a real hard time now choosing between food and gas. And in the next coming months, the price of gas and the price of utilities for heating homes is going to go up dramatically, that we're being told. So I don't know if I can support the 9% increase right now, more of a 4.5%, and then maybe in 6 months another increase of 4.5%, because that's going to be tough on people, that $7 increase.
It could be, yes. But there's projects that have to be done within the city to keep the water and sewer running as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, we spent a lot of time. I don't think you missed that meeting, I think, right? But we spent a lot of time talking about ARPA. Remember, we had meetings before COVID, and we said we're going to have to. I think it was Roger made the motion. Come back in 6 months because we're going to have a serious heart-to-heart about some potentially high rate increases. Well, then, thankfully, good or bad, ARPA came along, and we devoted a lot of that money to sewer projects because the sewer was the driver there. So the good news is the sewer's hanging in there now, but Jim showed up in the budget meeting, capital budget meeting, and said, don't be smiling because we got water issues. And it's basically the exact same scenario where we're facing, I forget the total dollar amount, but multi-million, 15 million, I think. It was like of quote-unquote new money in terms of coming up with, and that's what's driving that rate increase. It's not a payroll. Certainly some of it goes towards it, but this is all driven by the capital. And we know we can't increase rates enough to cover the capital, but we were able to be as strategic as we could be to at least get us through next year, and it hit the high bar issue. So I don't want you to think this is, just some effort to do everything at once. It's absolutely not.
I understand completely.
Okay.
Explain what ARPA is again for everyone.
That was the federal monies that were made available. American Recovery.
American Rescue Plan Act.
Rescue Plan. That's it. Thank you.
Everybody's saying ARPA.
Sorry.
Like,
Yeah.
I knew what it was. Love to say.
Yeah. It rescued the sewer fund, but not the water fund.
Okay. Roger.
Yeah, Dave, is it also true that we have done a good job in the community in terms of reducing our overall water consumption, which that ends up being a reduction in the dollars that we're receiving because people are using less water. So it's kind of like, we're doing a good job with that. And is that still true, though? I mean,
Yeah, no, it's true. And love Kent State, but I don't love how good they are at conservation of water. They've done a significant amount. As any of the major users, they're good business people, so they've been looking at how they can save money, and that's one of the things they've done. And we've talked about that the effective rate in terms of, in other words, in normal years, normal inflationary years, you would grant a 3% rate increase. Well, at the end of the year, I would say to Jim, so did we get 3% more in revenue last year? And he's like, no, it was like 1.5%, 2%. So we've never actually gotten the level that, so even if we ask for 9, we'll be happy if we get 6 or 7 just to get us through. I mean, that's kind of I don't know how much of that is directly through conservation or what, but it is always pretty much proven true, yeah.
Next.
Okay. I was hoping that we could pass the budget, I guess, in the next, approve the budget for the next council meeting?
For what now? Say that again.
Is there any further questions for her today?
I'll move to
I'm going to go to the audience.
Oh, you go to the audience first?
Yeah, is there anyone in the audience that has any questions?
I'll make a motion to move the budget as it's proposed with the emergency clause.
Second.
Discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
One opposed. Now you're going to move on to your next section.
I am. So the next item that I have is for the fiscal year 2022, the final budget amendment request that we have. I sent a memo to Mr. Ruller on November 29th. Normally, I would give you the detail of all the memos of what the requests are, but for December, it's a cleanup month, so what we will be doing next week is looking at all the line items that potentially are insufficient funds, basically, and trying to come back at the next council meeting with the ordinance that shows all the dollars that are necessary to get us through the end of the year.
Questions from council? No, you're not going to ask any questions at all?
Well, yeah, Mike, that's just clarified for the audience out there. This is normal
Yes.
housekeeping, correct?
Yes.
That we do at the end of the year to
Yes, sir.
reconcile our accounts.
And yes, it is. And the other thing that we're going to try to do, since we are now on a cash basis for our RETA income tax collections, instead of doing a true-up next year, we're going to try to do a final appropriation transfer this year, so we know how longer we'll have those true-ups.
Okay.
And that's actually, and it doesn't sound like a big deal, but she and I drive her crazy during the budget process because I'm like, this number doesn't match that number. She's like, well, it's the true up or it's the cash basis versus. And I said, well, that's really hard to explain to people. We need to get it all. And she's like, well, when we make that shift, it's going to look weird for 1 year, or like it's going to be way off. But then after that, we have the new baseline. So she promised that we would try to get that done and get that all on the new baseline and moving forward. Because otherwise, it looks like our income tax is way off or way,
Right. We were always waiting until January to record our December receipts because RETA is always a month off. Well, governments are always on a cash basis. So what you receive is what you should be recording. But we weren't doing that with just, and income tax was the only one we weren't doing it with. So we switched that. So going forward, we'll be all on a cash basis for that.
Further from council. I already asked about the audience, correct? Yep. Back to council.
Motion to approve with emergencies.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. What are you doing now?
Andy, you're still up here.
I am.
That's the most we've ever heard from you.
So the last item you have are the then and now purchase orders of approvals. So in accordance with Section 5705.541D of the Ohio Revised Code, we're required to get any then and now purchase orders approved from council that were done throughout the year. So this is also a cleanup ordinance that we've been having for the last couple of years.
Questions? Seeing none, anybody in the audience? Back to council.
Move to approve with emergency.
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye. Okay. We need an executive session, so I'm going to move an executive session for the position allocation and general comp plan. Roll call. Oh, I need a second to that. I'm sorry. Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish? Yes. Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner? Ms. Wallach?
Let's take 5 minutes, and we have to have the council chamber cleared.
Oh, man.
Oh. Higher still, they don't think the federal rate is high. I don't think it would hurt to do the probably not until the end of next year, 2023.
Where are they at?
6 months ago.
That sounds fine, doesn't it?
6 months ago, they were 3.5.
I know.
That's crazy.
I know.
Hey, brother, what's happening?
Hey, Amy.
Yeah, well, I think if I had vacation.
No, hell no.
We have two people running.
Trying to
One is the president.
I'm getting all excited for that next
The other
meeting.
person,
Yeah,
who was,
yeah.
I wish I would have brought. Yeah, there's going to be two because, trying to think of her name. Pam is done in December. She's done. Kind of
I think Pam Ferguson. You did? She's going to move, so she's going to. Big First? I understand. So let me check with Jonah.
You gave him the
I'm pretty
opportunity.
sure she's
Open
moving.
the door. You're like, you want to make a couple
She'll
shots?
cycle off and she'll be back with both, because both are very good.
Let's not talk about that. That was a terrible.
Let's hopefully just go short and sweet.
So I don't know if you knew the other thing.
Depend upon his case.
Right, yes, I do that. So we did.
That'd be great, but I didn't make the motion because of
Yes, your mother, my mother.
How are you? I almost reached out to you the other day. How's everything going?
Garrett just kind of said to me, like I said, she's giving me a list of things she wanted to fix. Garrett, he's like,
I guess I'm just feedback. I'm really
not
sorry.
recently. This was back when she. Oh. Did she just move, like a couple of years ago, move
5 years.
5 years ago. Well, it was back when I was doing my manager breakfast.
Oh,
and
yeah.
She showed up and cornered me. She was super nice.
I'm the expert. The bushes at the end of the road, right? And down here, like, you just got to pull out. You guys are old. That's the best.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. When it comes down like that, it just sucks.
It was like a Sunday night dinner. We're having Sunday dinner. We all have Sunday night dinner. And it's my family, Ryan,
Mine is intended? Oh, it's not showing. I don't know anything.
This record I already got into with my mother. I'm like, really? 5 years? And I'm just hearing about this now. Look, I thought it was terrible. I want to take shit.
I'll put it on my calendar.
And I was like, aren't you the one that had to tear out the carpet because allergens can look at the carpet? I don't think you opened your window. Michelle's like, gotcha. Yeah, gotcha.
Sorry.
So Michelle taking after her dad then, or?
Yes. Yes. But it's just, it's a bunch of and Tom, I'm sure I was old man. And Nana Lacey, they're not a great partner, but they're not a team.
No, exactly.
And the guy said, nothing's changed. We got to take it for his word.
I know. And he said, the mayor said to me at least, every now and again you hear a whine in the background, like an engine whine. But he goes,
well, Michelle's like, Mom, you bought a place next to a factory. It's like buying a house next to the airport.
I need the council chamber cleared in 2 minutes, please.
So I was checking out I was trying to look at my potential races for next year.
Yeah.
So now I like periodically stop on the Hollymont
Hey,
site.
thank you. Thanks for your help.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Oh, what a
I checked
cutie.
the Hollymont site.
Yep.
They got a lot of snow.
Hey, how's it
At
going?
least
Yeah,
they
I
did.
was here when that
Still
site
there.
worked.
They
That
said
was
they had the
awesome.
snow
How old?
machines cranking and
9 months. Audrey just started crawling. She's 8 months.
If you want to add a couple more in again, I think it would go a long way. I'm just saying. I didn't make a motion
I have
to be
this
like, oh, it's like
very cute video here. They just sent us of her she wants the remote control. She crawls to the remote control.
It's like,
She
I
can't quite.
remember when you and I first talked about it, you'd want, like, I think you might get people saying that
She watch. She'll all of a sudden realize, hey, wait, there she goes. She's gonna get it. He said, Dad, she wants a remote control. She wants my watches. She wants the phone. I don't understand. I said, well, maybe it's because her mom's Chinese and she's got. He didn't. He said, don't say that in front of my wife. I was like, I was just kidding. Look at, oh my